Have you ever stopped to wonder who really creates the money? Who is really in control of the money that drives our economy? Is it the government, the banks, or someone else entirely? Do you know who sets the policies that determine the value of the currency and the flow of money through society? In this video, we will uncover the mystery of who controls money and reveal the often hidden forces that shape our financial system. By the end of this video, you will have a better understanding of the complex system that controls money and its influence on our daily lives. Get ready to have your eyes opened as we reveal the truth about who really holds power when it comes to money. The answer to this question is not taught in most schools. Even though we spend our whole lives developing skills to earn money, most of us are unaware of who issues it. So when someone asks, who controls the money? The first thing that might come into most people's mind would be the government. Well, that's incorrect. The government doesn't control the money, so who does? To understand the answer to this question, let's rewind a bit. After suffering through 50 years of war, the English government was in dire need of money in 1694 to fund their political means. Scottish banker William Paterson came up with a solution to establish a privately owned bank that could issue money to the government whenever it was needed, and the world's first modern central bank was established here. But how do they create the money? The answer is out of thin air. This might sound strange, and you might think that there is a fixed amount of money in the world, but that's not true. Money is being created out of thin air all the time, but it's illegal if you do it, so don't get any strange ideas. Now let's fast forward a bit and see how the Federal Reserve System came into being. In the 20th century, a group of bankers wanted to establish a central bank in the United States of America. In December 1910, Senator Nelson Aldrich and 6 other individuals got together for a meeting that went on for 9 days on Jekyll Island off the coast of Georgia. This group of people created Federal Reserve System. These 6 people were to be kept hidden by the news reporters to avoid questions because, as the president of the National City Bank of New York, Frank Vanderlip, said if people were to discover that their group had gotten together and written a bill, Congress would never pass that bill. But what was so special about these 6 people? All of them were highly important and rich individuals like heads of banks and government treasuries. To give you a rough idea of their wealth, these 6 men represented a quarter of the world's worth in 1910. At that time, people knew about central banks, and they observed that wherever a central bank went, wealth inequality grew at that place. The economy would become volatile. It would go up and then plummet to the ground. And after every time the economy suffered, the rich people got richer and the poor got even poorer. That is why these bankers wrote the banking bill in secrecy. So, these bankers fooled people by manipulating news about the Federal Reserve Act. And they also fooled Congress by adding some clauses in the bill only to remove them later. And just like that, the bill was passed on December 23, 1913. And the power of creating and issuing American money fell into the hands of a small group of people. And now, the Federal Reserve is the most powerful entity in the US. It is an independent body, and no one has the power to overrule its actions, not even the government. And if you are thinking, why should you be aware of this? Then let me tell you that this central banking model is now being followed in almost every country. A few places that don't have a central banking system are Iran, North Korea, and Cuba. One more thing that might shock you is that all the money in this world is backed by nothing. The US dollar has served as the world's reserve currency ever since the end of World War II. This connects your nation to the Federal Reserve's monetary policy in America since all central banks hold USD in reserve, and all other currencies are backed by the USD. So, even if you are not from the USA, there is some link between your currency and the US dollar. All US dollars were backed by and exchangeable for gold when the Bretton Woods system, the post-World War II monetary system, was established. The system was essential for globalization at the time because, in the absence of floating exchange rates, currency value changes were largely predictable. Unfortunately, the US economy in 1971 was suffering after the Vietnam War, and central banks wanted to exchange their USD reserves for gold out of concern that the USD would decline. President Nixon removed the USD from the gold standard, and it has been a floating currency ever since. So, this implies that earlier, all currencies were backed by USD, which was backed by gold. But when USD was removed from the gold standard, all other currencies were also backed by nothing tangible except for trust in the US government. Now, how does that sound to you? But if the currency is not backed by anything, then how you and I are able to play? And what happens when they print money that is backed by nothing? A currency backed by nothing is called a fiat currency. In other words, it is money because we have been told by the government that it is money. When the Fed prints money, it reduces the currency supply of other countries since all their reserves are backed by the USD. This is why China and Russia have been selling their USD reserves to buy gold. So when a currency is backed by nothing, it can be said that the economic system is working on faith. And because of this faith, you can exchange your currency for goods and services. A major reason why this faith is still intact is that most people don't know where the money is actually coming from. When a government needs more money, the Treasury Department is asked to issue bonds and give them to the central bank in exchange for printing money that can be used for government spending. But where does the central bank get this money? You see, when you and I write a check, we must have sufficient funds in our bank account to cover the check. But that is not the case when Federal Reserve writes a check. It is actually making money. To put it in simpler words, they are writing checks to withdraw money from a bank account that literally has no funds. You wish you could do that, but you can't. But if you think that all the money that is in circulation today is created by the Federal Reserve, you might want to think again. Commercial banks are responsible for creating the vast majority of the money that is currently in use. Do you believe that banks look after your money when you deposit it with them? The truth is that the banks now possess the money and have promised to return it to you upon request. A slightly better understanding of the banking system leads people to believe that banks borrow money from savers and lend it to borrowers. But that isn't the whole story either. Let's see how banks create money. The first thing that you should know is that 97% of today's economy exists as bank deposits, while the other 3% exists as physical currency. And the money that banks create is not the paper money that carries the government's logo. It is the digits that you see when you check your balance on your phone or at an ATM. The accounting that banks use to make loans allows them to create money. When you check the balance of your account, the numbers you see are simply accounting records stored in the bank's computers. These figures represent a liability or IOU or a promise to pay you by your bank. However, you can use your debit card or internet banking to spend these IOUs, just like $10 bills. So, banks can create these electronic IOUs that are used as substitutes for money. Every time when someone loans money from a bank, the bank creates new money. Whenever a bank loans money to someone, the bank does not hand over thousands of physical currency, neither does it transfer money from the bank's funds. Banks simply credit their customers' bank accounts by creating money out of nothing. So when you pay interest on the money you loaned from a bank, that money was created out of nothing. What's even crazier is that banks can lend out 10 times more money than they have in reserves. And this also leads to inflation. Of course, the negative side to this money creation is that every new loan results in a new debt. Our mountain of personal debt stems from this. Rather than borrowing from someone else's life savings, banks just wave their magic wand and create more money out of thin air. This creates a system of debt, under which debt is actual money. The former governor of the Federal Reserve also stated that if there was no debts in the money system, there would be no money. It sounds bizarre, but this is the system we are a part of. The financial crisis of 2008 was eventually brought on by a wave of defaults that occurred when the debt load eventually became unmanageable. Yes, there were other factors that also played their roles in the 2008 crisis, but this system had a much bigger impact. To conclude, we can say that the central bank is free to print unlimited amounts of money. However, it also takes care not to print excessively. In fact, this is often cited as the main reason for the existence of independent central banks. If the governments had the power to print money, they would undoubtedly print too much money, which would cause inflation and destabilize the economy. Central banks also have some good aspects as they can act as the last resort lender to commercial banks in the time of a crisis, so that innocent depositors don't lose their money. Thus, your money is under the control of the Federal Reserve, your central bank, and all commercial banks. And your money has value only because your government says so. Make sure to hit the like button if you learned something from this video. Share your opinion with us. Comment below. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notifications so you don't miss more amazing videos like this from us.